it also offered me a chance to mix healthcare with finance. I knew I didn't want to leave healthcare, right? I wanted to have some element of that because I thought it's still an interesting sector. It's just I didn't want to be a doctor. So banking offered you a chance to mix both.
How are you able to mix both in banking?
Yeah, so my entire 12 years in banking, I always did healthcare. It's the weird thing. It's still after 25 years, the only sector, aside from 9 months of my life, it's the only sector I've ever done my entire career. I just did it from different aspects, right? From after medicine, going to business school. Banking was all about healthcare. So my first job in healthcare was, banking was actually at UBS, so it's this bank in London, and it was to cover pharmaceutical stocks as a equity research analyst. An equity research analyst essentially are the guys who opine on things like Glaxo and Roche, put a stock price target and say buy or sell, right? And it was a very good way of learning about finance and learning everything there is to know about pharmaceutical company, how you do drug trials, how you get reimbursed in the US and all that. So I did that first. And then it was a bit adventurous. 3 months into it, my entire team left to two separate banks. I had the choice to go with one part of it. I decided to stay because I like UBS. And so they said, what do you want to do next? And I said, well, I want to try being more with clients. So they said, why don't you move to the trading floor and start selling healthcare stocks to hedge funds? So that was interesting. Yeah, because I got to cover everything from Russian biotech to US HMOs to Japanese hospitals and devices. And so my job was to sell these stocks to hedge funds, which is quite a lot of fun, right? You go to a lot of parties. It's very cool. You get to go to Formula One and all these big events with people your own age who are clients. So a lot of my clients, my friends, quite enjoyed that. But again, healthcare, right? And then the last job I actually did in investment banking was actually as a managing director at Barclays. I actually did M&A, mergers and acquisitions. But again, healthcare companies, right? So I ran a sector team out of Hong Kong, and we did deals in China, India, Southeast Asia, Australia, but mainly mergers and acquisitions. So drug companies, devices, you name it, anything that's associated with healthcare. So 12 years, but just doing different parts of healthcare around the world, right? In banking.
For someone who has no idea what investment banking is or what the healthcare finance world is like how would you explain the whole thing in a nutshell for, say, a doctor who is interested in healthcare, curious about finance, curious about banking? How would you explain this?
Okay, so in finance and banking, there are generally three groups of people. Okay, they're the people who run the back office, like HR, finance, compliance, accounting, tech, just as you would in any company. Then there are the people who specialize in products, meaning that they do one product across different sectors, like derivatives, right? Or raising equity capital across different sectors. And then there are the people who are sector specialists, which they specialize maybe more than one product, but they do one sector, which is the category that I spent my entire banking career in, right? Like I was always a sector specialist. Those are people usually with a particular background in science, or maybe they work outside in production. So that's how you did it. Then the other lens you can look at finance is whether you do buy side or sell side, meaning are you investing money or are you selling stuff to the people who invest money? Right. So I was always on the sell side, meaning my job in banking was to always sell stuff, to the people, or sell services to the people who are investing. Because even mergers and acquisitions, you're advising company on buying another company. It's a selling process, right? You're not the guy with the money. There is a bit of a middle ground because in the sell side, in an investment bank, sometimes you invest the bank's own money as well. So part of my job briefly was to do that, but by and large, it's sell side and then buy side. An example of buy side where you're investing money would be in a hedge fund, or you could be in a private equity fund or a VC fund. But essentially, again, even there, you're split between product and sector. So it's the same thing mirrored on both sides. That's
So
the
what
easy way to
leaders
understand it.
so what was it from your medical background that you brought with you into this finance side?
Yeah, it's kind of a very weird thing to kind of say, right? But like the things that I don't regret having done medicine, because I think you learn stuff in medical school and practicing as a doctor that you don't learn in any other course, right? So you think about what you learn in medicine. One is your ability to take responsibility early, right? Literally day one of med school, you could kill somebody. That doesn't happen in a normal job, right? Because if you're an accountant or a consultant or work in a bank, on day one, they limit the amount of damage you can do, right? Whereas if in healthcare, literally, and especially back then, we had fewer protections than young doctors do now. My first weekend was 72 hours, right? Like you don't do that now, it's illegal. Back then, that's just the way we did it. So you learn early, responsibility. You learn early how to deal with a lot of pressure, because when you've worked for 72 hours straight, 3 days after finishing medical school, trust me, no investment banking job is that hard. I know that bankers will always complain they work hard, but it's nothing like what we used to do as a junior doctor. It's much easier now, I think, for junior doctors. So maybe that comparison is skewed, but back then, I think the ability to kind of deal with pressure is a bit different. I think the third thing is you learn as a doctor how to read people really early, especially if you go to old school doctors. What we got taught was within 15 seconds of the patient walking to the room, you need to be able to tell what they do for a living, whether they're married, what their health status is, and how best are you going to communicate and to this person, because you need to make a connection, right? That is not something you learn in accounting or law or, whatever course you're going to do. So I think those three things were very transferable skills in investment banking, because the rest of it is just technical, right? Like you can teach anybody how to do a spreadsheet. It's not that hard. You can teach anyone how to build a financial model or do a presentation. That's easy. But the three things you can't teach are those three things, right? How do you read people? How do you deal with pressure? And how do you take accountability and responsibility for your decisions, right? So those are the three things I think that I brought across. So it was a case of, when I got in, trying to emphasize that those are the things I bring that are different to other people, even though I knew nothing about finance.
Well, I like how you say we have to read someone within like 15 minutes. You have to have their whole, it's not just medical history, but their whole life story, because at any one point, one of it could contribute to whatever they're presenting with.
Yeah. And you get taught that very early on, and you get taught how to look for symptoms and signs in faces and stuff. And ultimately, all these jobs, right, whether you do banking or business or consulting, it's still about people fundamentally. That doesn't change.
Join Disruptive Doctors. Oh, Disruptive Doctors.